Hello friends, in this video we will learn how to solve any star pattern program. You might have come across many videos, playlists or lengthy blogs explaining different pattern programs. So do you need to spend hours learning each of them? Answer is no. What you need is to understand the basics and learn the tricks so that you can answer any random pattern question which is given to you. Now if you go through this video, you will be able to make any of these patterns shown and I will explain to you how. We have used Java language over here, but if you know C++, you can also watch it as concept wise it is the same. Now you might have played with blocks when you were a kid. You could create any kind of shapes and designs from a simple block. We are going to use the same method here. What we are going to learn is two basic building blocks. These are how to make an increasing triangle and a decreasing triangle. Using just these two, we will teach you how to join them together to make any kind of pattern that is asked. So a complex pattern is nothing but these two basic triangles either filled with star, hash or dollar. An important point you need to know before you start is that when we print, we do it row by row. You always start printing from left side of the screen. If your star is printed away from the left side of the screen or there is space in between the stars like in this two-hill pattern, then you do not jump and print. This is actually done by printing spaces. So in this line, there are 4 spaces printed first, then 1 star and then again 7 spaces and then 1 star, and so on for all remaining rows. We cannot go back to previous row. So you have to print this entire row and then move to next row. So let's get started. The first thing in pattern is the size. Size means how big or how many rows you want in the triangle. Now either you could be asked to write a main and take size from the user. Here you can use any input class like scanner to take this input. Or if you are writing a function, this n could be passed to you as a parameter. Or if you are given size in question itself, in that case you can just directly assign it to a variable n. For our examples, we will consider that we have size in variable n which has value 5. Also in the remaining videos, we will just focus on the code to make the pattern. I will not write main every time as I assume that you will know how to just put the code inside any main or function block and compile it. Second point is that the pattern programs require you to use loops. If you do not know basics of for loop, please first watch my video on iterations. Let's start with a simple square as an example first. Now if you are asked to print 1 star, you will write a print statement which will print a star for you. Now if you are asked to print n stars, what will you do? We will use a loop here. The loop will start from j is equal to 1 to j less than equal to n. This loop will run 5 times and print the star 5 times. Now for the loop to run 5 times, there are these 2 ways and you need to stick to only one method out of these. One is where you start from 1 and you run this loop till less than and equal to n. Other is you start from 0 then run till less than n. Both will run 5 times. If we start from 0, it will run the loop 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 times, which means it runs 5 times. And if you start from 1, then j will take values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which also runs 5 times. The reason I am focusing on this is that I see many times kids confusing between less than and less than equal to, and it messes up the whole pattern. So pick one which you are comfortable with and stick with it. We will use 1 to less than equal to n for all our examples. So we have written this code with which we can print one row. But what we want is to print this row 5 times to get our square pattern. So what I will do is insert this complete set of code inside another loop which will print this row 5 times. But if you run this, you will see all stars are getting printed on the same row. How do we fix this? We do know that print statement prints in same rows and println statement goes to the next line. So can we just change the print star statement to println? If we do that, what happens is now each star is printed in next line. What we want is 5 stars in same rows and then it should go to next line. Means this loop will continue to have print statement, and only after this whole row is printed or the whole loop is executed, we want to go to next line. So we will insert a println statement as the last statement of the outside loop. So let's just understand how the loop will work. We start with the outer loop. It holds our row numbers and starts with 1. Then we enter the inner loop. It holds our column numbers and starts with 1 and runs till 5, printing all the columns. Once inner loop is finished, it executes the println statement to go to next row. The control comes back to outer loop and outer loop increments by 1 to row 2. Again inner loop prints 5 columns as it will again start from 1 to 5. Then the println statement takes it to the beginning of next row. This repeats for all rows till I reaches 5 and then we exit from the outer loop. The key points which you need to remember from this program is, do not forget to put println statement and it should be the last statement of the outer loop. This is very important point, and if you miss writing println statement before the closing bracket, your whole pattern can go for a toss. Now if I just run this code, you will see your output has stars too close and it is giving an effect of rectangle instead of square. You can fix this by just adding an extra space next to it in the print statement. So this is our final code to print square. Let's go back to the print statement. We are printing star here. This could actually be anything. If you print hash, it will be a pattern of hash, or a dollar, then it will be a pattern of dollar, and so on. Now let's learn our first basic pattern, increasing triangle. Let's take our previous program which printed a square. We will just edit this to print triangle. We now know that the outer loop determines the rows and inner loop determines the columns. We see that in this pattern the rows are 5 or n only, so our outer loop is correct already and requires no change. It is already printing n rows from 1 to n. Coming to columns, instead of printing 5 stars or printing 1 to n every time, it should print 1 star for first row, then 2 star for second row, then 3 star for third row, and so on. So the point to note here is that actually my row number is telling me every time how many stars to print. Row number is stored in variable I, which is starting from 1 and incrementing to 2, 3, 4 till all rows are printed. So what we will just change here is set the inner loop to run from 1 to I. This will ensure inner loop runs for only 1 time in the first row, 2 times in the second row, then 3, then 4 till n. This completes our program for increasing triangle. So important takeaway from this program is, to make an increasing triangle, outer loop is set from 1 to n and nested loop is set from 1 to I. You need to remember this. The remaining program is exactly the same. Now let's learn second basic pattern, decreasing triangle. We will again take our square program. We will edit this to print decreasing triangle. Here again, if you see this pattern, outer loop is correct already and requires no change, and it is already printing n rows from 1 to n. But now we need the columns to print decreasing numbers of stars, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How do we change our nested for loop to reduce by 1 every time? This time we will change the start condition. We will use I as the start condition. So for the first row, loop will run from 1 to 5 printing 5 stars. Second row, it will run from 2 to 5, that means 4 times, and then 3, 2 and 1 star. This completes our program for decreasing triangle. So here what you need to remember is that to make decreasing triangle pattern, the outer loop is from 1 to n and the nested loop is from I to n. Remaining program is exactly the same. Now you have the basic ammunition in place. If you do not understand these two basic triangles, go back, rewind and understand it again. Let's take a look at some of the other patterns we saw earlier. All of the patterns you see here are made from combination of these two type of triangles. As you know, we always start printing from left side of the screen. So where we see blank, it's actually the same triangle pattern made with spaces. So this pattern is made up of two triangles, one increasing pattern of space and one decreasing pattern of star. This pattern also has two triangles, one is decreasing pattern of space followed by one increasing pattern of star. This pattern has three triangles. First, it has a decreasing pattern of space followed by increasing pattern of star and one more increasing pattern of star. Also do note, in all of these here, the rows are n only, but column have different printing options like space or star. So let's try to solve them. Let's pick up this pattern first. This pattern has two triangles. First is a decreasing triangle printing spaces and second is increasing triangle printing stars. Do note that on same rows we have to now print space as well as star. Let's write the program for it. Since our number of rows are same as that of square pattern, we will first copy the outer loop from our previous program and it runs from 1 to 5. Do note our println line, which takes us to the new row every time, sticks to the end of the outer loop and you should not forget it or link it with any of the inside loop. We next recall our code for nested loop of decreasing triangle and we will write our nested for loop for decreasing triangle from I to n. Here the print statement will print spaces only. Now the next triangle is increasing triangle pattern printing stars in the same row. So we will just add another nested for loop for increasing triangle pattern. This loop, as we know, will run from 1 to I. This will print star. Let's take a look at how this will work for the first row when I is equal to 1. First, the upper nested loop will execute and print 5 spaces. Then in the same row, it will enter the second nested loop and will print 1 star. Then it will go to the next row and I will become 2. Then it will print 4 spaces from the first nested loop and then 2 stars from the second nested loop. So these two nested loops are working one after the other to print all columns we need in a row. This will go on till the entire pattern is printed. Now this is the program for this pattern. You need to remember two important points here. 1. Println statement is linked to rows or outer loop. We do not repeat it with every inner loop. Second, if you are printing a star with one space in the end, that means 2 characters in your print statement, then your spaces also has to be always 2. So basically the number of characters which we are going to use in our print statement have to be the same, otherwise you will see a distorted image. This is an important point and you should always remember to print same number of characters. What if the pattern was like this? It is an increasing triangle of space and then decreasing triangle of star. Since our number of rows are same as that of square pattern, we will first copy the same outer loop from our previous program and it runs from 1 to 5. Since first loop is increasing triangle, we will write our nested for loop for increasing triangle from 1 to I. Here the print statement will print space only. Now the next triangle is decreasing triangle. So we will just add another nested loop for decreasing triangle pattern which will run from I to N. This will print star. This is the final code for this pattern. Now what if pattern was like this, a hill pattern? This pattern has one decreasing triangle of space, then two increasing triangle of star. Now we already have written code for first two triangles of this pattern. Here the third triangle is also an increasing triangle pattern. So we will write one more for loop inside the same outer loop. Now there is a small catch here which you need to remember. Let's run this and see. Here when you see the output, you see it does not have a peak. Why? Because our loop knows how to make 5 columns each. In such patterns, actually there is one less column printed. So to make this nested loop run one less, we will just change the for condition of first increasing triangle from less than equal to less than. This will make this loop run one less time, so as good as printing one less column. This is our final code for this pattern. Now what if it was a reverse mountain pattern? Here there is one increasing triangle and two decreasing triangle. Now we already have written code for first two triangles of this pattern. Like in previous question, we will just add a third nested loop for increasing triangle. And to make sure we have our value correct, we will have nested loop print one less column. This is our code for reverse mountain pattern. Let's look at pattern which doubles up on rows as well now. Let's take this diamond pattern. This has double the number of rows. So what are we going to do? Here you have to print a pattern below another pattern. We already have a code to make the hill pattern and for inverted hill pattern too. Here note that the rows are double, so what we need to do is just place two code one below the other along with the outer loop. So you run one outer loop along with its nested loop for rows of upper set of triangles and run another outer loop along with its nested loop for rows of lower set of triangles. Let's run this to see if by just doing this we get the desired pattern. This is close, but this too has one issue, that it does not have pointed edges. Looking closely, we see actually our rows too don't totally double up. There is one less row printed to give us a pointed edge. The solution is similar to what we did for columns. We need to print one less row. How do we do that? We just reduce the condition of outer for loop to print one less row, effectively deleting the last row. So we will just change our outer for loop condition to less than instead of less than equal to. This is our required program for printing a diamond. You can now try any different patterns like these shown using the same logic. Break it into increasing and decreasing triangles and then just bundle up the code. Hope you have understood how to solve the pattern programs. In our next video, we will cover how to do number patterns. If you have any doubts, do reach out to us at simplycoding.in. Thank you and goodbye.